everyone, and welcome back to the Brightworks and another match of Beyond All Reason. Where today we're going to be taking a look at what the pros get up to in Supreme Christmas. Yeah, the winter edition of Beyond All Reason's favorite map, Supreme Isthmus. It's the snow-laden battlefield that today our Blue Cortex commander, hailing from China, is going to be showing us what they've got. The blue commander here, spawning as the core commander at 40 open skill, and going to be showing us what they feel like doing over here on the far sea lane. It's an interesting position, so I'm definitely curious to see what our 40 open skill hero here can actually get up to. There's a lot of interesting plays you can make on this map, so I'm definitely excited to see what that's going to be all about. Spawning in the backline in what is not a shocking position here, it's going to be none other than Polygon. Definitely a player we've seen around here and there, especially here on this channel, and also just around in the games. Polygon, a very talented player, but also one known to well, go for a plan, and if it doesn't work out, sometimes that plan is all that they care about. Throwing it out the window and immediately abandoning the game. It's one of those things that you have to be very careful about, especially as you move into playing in team games, is being very, very careful about your team morale. And so Polygon here, in the backline, going to be playing a Armada commander, which is interesting. It means that there's definitely a clear-cut build that Polygon wants to go for here. It's either some sort of tech rush, or it's going to be something a little bit more greedy, a little bit later game. So we'll be checking back in on the red commander a little bit later. Yeah, constructors, resbots, I'm expecting the whole 9 yards, maybe going for a wind turbine economy start here. Very, very interested in seeing what our red commander can whip out at this point. On the front lines, we see a very, very standard grunt start. This has become very popular. For the longest time, it was like unheard of to send more than one grunt to escort your resbot. It has now become basically the standard that you pump out as many grunts as possible to get your resbot out to the front line and reclaiming as quick as possible. Nice control right here from the Maroon Commander, Aggressa, the 18 open skill commander, showing us that they own the midsection. GG is called as Elite Noob 13, loses the resbot, and now it'll be Aggressa who controls the 1,000 or so metal lying in the midsection here of Supreme Isthmus. And that metal goes quick, too. Those rocks don't take long to reclaim. It's one of those nerfs that I feel like might be worth it, just to slow down this frontline aggression a little bit, is just to make these rocks take a little longer to reclaim. It was an interesting suggestion I heard. I unfortunately can't remember where I heard it from. I do apologize. If you're out there, I do apologize. Looks like the Maroon Commander, pardon me, not Maroon, the Lavender Commander is going to be going for a little bit of a slower start here. Now, Mia Khalifa, yeah, that's not... Anyways, the Lavender Commander here. Gonna be going for a slower start, going into some of those vehicles. Gonna be firing away with a couple of those missiles out of the missile truck right here. Those have a slightly lower firing rate. They have no tracking built in, but obviously, to substitute all that, they packed in just a little bit more C4, made those missiles a little more explosive, and so they do a little more damage than they once used to. Going to be utilized for the defense over here, but obviously a much, much slower start. You can see none of these mexes are taken, and you really have to take those as the frontliner here, especially if you're going to go vehicles. Yeah, there's no constructor out already. Building wind turbines. We're just building wind turbines with the comm. Very, very slow way of getting started here. So it's going to be essentially up to the green commander to hold this front line. There go those missile trucks firing away here. Trying to kite. Actually doing a decent amount of damage to grunts. They kind of were, you know, they tickle units to death. But in this sort of situation, the grunts are light enough that the missile trucks sort of work here. In a weird kind of way. Yeah, you know what? I don't mind it at all. At the end of the day, the missile trucks will be enough to deflect this grunt attack. I think more of a fortunate situation here for our Lavender hero than anything else, but those grunts do go down, and so the base won't be damaged. They were looking for a kill on the metal extractor, but because the Lavender commander had expanded so slowly, there was no metal extractor to kill, so it ended up working out quite nicely here. Hot Pink Commander is sending a air scout around to the northern side. It looks like we're going to try and scout out who is going to be playing in the water. It looks like the answer to that question is going to be Cavalier 870. The Powder Blue Commander here for the blue team, going to be going into a very early construction turret. Actually, we're going to be going into two. Ooh, a little bit too much early on. You actually don't need a construction turret until basically T2 economy. Your T1 laboratory is more than capable of producing those boats, especially if you're producing the expensive boats, the destroyers. It can actually spend all your metal for the foreseeable, you know, start of the game here. Scout plane shot down right here by Tim Adams. Nicely done. A little bit of a rascal gameplay moving forward here as well, trying to blast down and get through, and there we go. A bunch of those green rascals punching through the front lines. Nicely done by Arturo, but the static defenses here, well, no energy, but at the very least they are in place in order to shut this down. An excellent defense right there. The pink commander taking the slower route to get up to the front line, but well worth it in the amount of damage that was negated by those towers being up and running, and so those rascals not actually managing to kill any of the metal extractors back here. That was there it is. That was a commander explosion to go into the T2 lab. Fairly standard here for Supremismus. So far, basically, well, I was just about to call it a standard game. Okay. It's a con, cries out the purple commander. It's actually incorrect. It's a single grunt dropped off on the enemy lines over here. And the reason for it is simply because that's all it takes to kill these mexes. Yeah, these are all just raw expansions here from Cavalier 870, so it's going to be all it takes in order to shut this down. Now, we do have a core commander in the air, so a single shuriken should be more than enough to shut this off. Are we going to be going for that? Yes, indeed we are. Tim Adams pumps out that shuriken to go paralyze that unit. How much damage can it do in the meantime? One mex is down. Will it be able to get a second? Or even a third? It looks like the answer is yes. It gets a second mex before being paralyzed here. Nicely done. Nice reaction from the Cyan commander. Obviously, they could have done quite a bit more damage. A couple of dolphins available here. Those dolphins fire a twin barrage of plasma projectiles. Very dangerous in swarms, but in low numbers, and especially fight commanded or attack commanded like this, ooh, not able to do very much on the front lines here. Look at that. It's going to be a gunslinger rush. Okay. When's the last time that we've seen a gunslinger rush? I couldn't tell you. The gunslinger is a bit of a weird unit to put out on the front. Much less popular than, for instance, the Tsar rush, like we tend to see out of Cortex backliners, or midliners, I should say. Yeah, I don't mind this at all. Obviously a little risky, right? Because this gunslinger is, it demands an extreme amount of micro, so handing this off to one of your lower OS players, it always is a little bit nerve-wracking because you're never quite sure if they're going to be able to micro it properly. And then also, of course, you're looking for the maximum value to these T2 units on the front line, and that's going to be the high-yield units that do the most damage. But there we go. Already a commander kill under this gunslinger's belt right here as it levels up a little bit and it gains its increased range, meaning they can fire a little bit further, it fires a little bit faster, and going to be quite nice for dealing with, for instance, these medium tanks here. Nice D-gun from Noel. I like to see it. Yeah, Gunslinger just utilizing the front line to clean things up. Doing a bunch of damage to these frontliner units, and you can see actually like a significant sum of damage to a lot of these units. But it's not really... It's not the big burst of instant damage that we get out of things like the Tsar, the Fat Boy, those heavy hitters. It's more of a subtle influence across the battlefield, but hey, if you can snipe a commander or two, definitely well worth it. Look how much that levels this guy up, by the way. The Gunslinger actually has increased XP acceleration, or accelerated XP gain. So as it's firing away here, it's leveling up a lot quicker than most units would, and you can see that in the bottom here. XP of 0.18. Whoa, it's in a lot of trouble, though. Gunslinger has to be microed back right here, but I think with the missiles and the ships and all the rest of it, it will go down. But hey, 2 commander kills is not shabby, and just like that, suddenly the blue team is left in a really dire state. We've got loads of static defenses, including but not limited to a gauntlet agitator, pardon me, on the front lines, firing away here out into the distance at whatever it can. It's also, of course, going to be quite useful for, or these LOTs rather, are going to be quite useful for defending against any kind of swarm. We've got jammers as well to keep everything safe from barrage. This is looking phenomenal right now. I like the plays from the red team. They're being very aggressive, and it's cool to see. We do have the, oh, interesting. So we have a core versus armed navy on the southern side, and a core versus armed navy on the northern side, so that's always fun. A little bit of a shuriken pull. There is some anti-air in the mix here, but actually it's not very much anti-air. Yeah, this amount of shuriken could probably beat this. Okay, it's a good play. It's a really good play. Oh, Atian, you need to get those units into position. Oh, if those shuriken were jumping on top of these boats, they could make this a really, really efficient trade right here. There's no res subs in the mix, though, for the brown commander, so even if this trade went well, it would be the blue commander that actually ends up winning it because these res subs would reclaim all that metal. So, trade-offs left and right. At the end of the day, it's a matter of perspective, right? And taking out the enemy's navy is great, of course, but if they can just rebuild the navy with their units and, of course, your units, have you really won that engagement? I don't really think so. Still, though, shuriken would have made for a really interesting fight, at the very least taking down that navy and forcing them to reclaim it or resurrect it, rather than this fairly mediocre trade, I would say. Definitely an unfortunate situation, and now shuriken are dying left and right here as well. Ooh, as those boats fire their little anti-air missiles. Yeah, unfortunate misplay right there. Miscommunication from the red team. I think that trade was meant to go a whole lot better, and it definitely didn't go as well as they had hoped. Armada looks so rough on the Navy. If you're not used to playing Armada Navy, there's a couple of things you can do to make Armada Navy really good. Namely, the most important thing is that you lean heavily into these destroyers. They only cost 880 metal versus the core destroyer costing 960, so they're a little bit cheaper. Obviously, that doesn't mean you can spam them out, right? But it does mean that you can get them up a little bit quicker. You can get a few more of them than the core Navy, and if you utilize them in conjunction with a bunch of those anti-air boats, the skaters, they can get underneath or underfoot or under prop of the boats of the enemy and then allow you to do a bunch of flanking damage. It's sort of the only way that Navy can work for Armada commanders, because otherwise, core just has every advantage. They do more damage, they have more range, they have more HP, they're just better in every way. So if you're not going to brute force your way forward, you need to be really, really strategic about it. And that's really difficult for a lot of early naval players. It's one of those things that's very punishing and beyond all reason. Worth learning, because there are only so many commanders that are really truly good at it. So if you want to become one of the greats, it's open territory, right? It's free territory, ripe for the claiming. Submarine here in a lot of danger. Yeah, those depth charges will wipe it away pretty quick. Submarine's a very, very niche weapon. Oh, amphibious bombs. Oh, no. Oh, no. Amphibious bombs underneath the Navy right now from the Orange Commander. What a cheeky play. Amphibious bombs are, well, they received an update recently. Basically, the update making them a little bit... Well, actually, there was two updates. So one of them was naval amphibious bombs will only detonate when they're right underneath something, when they're fight commanded. When they are, when the destroyers fire away their torpedo launchers, they have a lot more maneuverability so that they can actually track down those tumbleweeds a lot more effectively. Means that there's a lot of potential for these destroyers to defend this, but obviously with enough tumbleweeds you can jump on top of these. And at 65 metal apiece, they really are just ridiculously efficient at killing these boats. Yeah. The boats literally cannot push forward, otherwise they risk just blowing up because of the underwater mines. That is too funny. Double agitator frontline right here, holding back the forces of the Lavender. We, yeah, do have a forward rattlesnake, but I think that's a little too far forward. Those missile trucks firing away now. And you know what? Providing a lot of cover, though, for these agitators, or a lot of vision, rather, for these agitators to fire away. The Tsar now firing into the distance as well. The agitators with a range of 1245, the Tsar with the range of just 650. Means obviously they do work sort of as anti-Tsar defenses. Only to a certain degree, though. The Tsar has so much HP. What a funny play here over on the high seas. Yeah, the tumbleweeds going for the surround. What a weird engagement. Not one we see here hardly ever. Prickly, the last commander standing here for the red team on the front line. Oh no, pardon me, Knoll is here as well. The tan and pink commanders trying to hold together this front, but showing just how powerful that Tsar is. You can see it flipped this front line from a gigantic advantage right here into an advantage for the blue team here. Meanwhile, that core Navy has strategically disassembled everything that the powder blue commander held near and dear. You can see that build power is basically wasted here as the economy just isn't big enough to provide the, you know, the resources in order for that to work. Shuriken's jumping on top of this. Okay. There's not enough here to paralyze all of this, I'm afraid, but the Shuriken are definitely doing the most that they can. Yeah, a cry for air has gone out. An obvious blunder not to include anti-air in the mixture right here, but at the very least the Shuriken will manage to bring down a couple of these units, right? With the destroyers and the submarines and all the rest of it firing away here. Some of that metal will go down. Not enough, I would say, to swing this battle back in the favor of the blue commander, but definitely bringing things a little bit closer, if only there were some res subs, which unfortunately there just are not, which means, yeah, this trade may as well have not happened. Buccaneer now out and running. We have Platypus on the field here as well. Platypus looking quite good on the Navy, actually. The base of the brown commander, Edo Vision, has been thoroughly destroyed. But the orange commander looks to be stepping into the water here, trying to take some sort of ground in order to start pushing forward. The T2 lab is already up and running for the blue commander, who has gone ahead and gone into some of those despot battleships, and is going to be trying to defend the coast here from the from the amphibious crawling bomb assault. It is a difficult defense because every single one of those bombs poses a gigantic lethality potential to any of your boats, even the T2 boats, mind you. Platypus doing a pretty good job here as well. Coming in at, yeah, 260 metal. They're actually relatively cost efficient. They're sort of a weird... They sit in a sort of weird role because they are an amphibious raider bot, but they also skirmish fairly well against T1 and decently against T2. I will say once those destroyers are out, yeah, you can see they start to melt away pretty quickly. Just a couple of shots from that tri-headed Cerberus cannon melt apart those, maybe blast apart, really more aptly said, those poor unfortunate Platypus sinking face down into the water. Rattlesnake firing away, or a... Oh, no, it is a Persecutor pop-up plasma cannon. Not bad. The res subs here under the water. I think we need to start reclaiming, rather. If we reclaim and turn all this metal into a bunch of destroyers, there's a likelihood that we could make something happen here, but unfortunately it's just not the case. There's so many options and so little time. That Yellow Navy moving forward, yeah, these res subs are just going to pick this up just in time for it to get blown apart again. Not only is resurrecting, having enough build power in resurrectors to get things up and running an important factor, but also where things are going to be resurrected, right? Resurrecting an enemy unit right on top of the enemy fortifications or the enemy units, obviously not going to work out too well. Reclaiming some of that metal is phenomenal, though. And I'd love to see more of it. Yeah, we have a little bit of a cheeky run-by attempt over here as a bunch of gunboats try and swim past the defenses into the backline. Nice pull from the Shuriken on the defense over here on the northern side, saving the Cyan Commander? No, the Powder Blue Commander from some serious issues. Wow. What a recapturing of the naval field over here, though. We've got the laboratory back up and running, constructors as well. Nowhere near enough energy, though. It's time that we start investing a little more heavily into the energy economy. Wind turbines, solar panels, tidal generators, really the name of the game here. 21 tidal speed is more efficient than a fusion reactor, so definitely well worth going for as many of these as you possibly can. 3, 4, 5 constructors, all building tidal generators to get that economy jump-started here. The res subs making up all the difference. Yeah, the Blue Commander just building up a fabulous navy, and I don't even mind it. Obviously, building up that navy and then utilizing that to harass some of these bases is a extremely viable strategy, especially on maps like this. Yellow Commander finally pulls the forces back, but after they be scuffed up quite badly. Meanwhile, the front line is devastated. The front line is absolutely devastated. Fiends rushing forward here and blowing apart all of the non-existent static defenses. And just like that, the Green Commander's frontline base has been torn asunder. Shuriken moving into position here, trying to shut these down, but it's a little too late. Yeah, Vanisher missile fires away, but at this point, those Fiends' work have been done. Their front line is already gone. Missile trucks, wow. Failing to kill the smallest of units right here. Firing into the distance to try and kill these rascals, but not doing all too well. Uh-oh. Destroyer makes its appearance. Its guest appearance, the Destroyer now firing away into the distance, dumbfiring on top of where it knows the position here of that agitator is. There's actually something is spotting over here. Does the Destroyer really have that much vision? I suppose it does. Reaching out into the distance and firing away right here. That Destroyer is doing tons and tons of work. That being said, these coastal defenses are actually performing decently. Yeah, that Rattlesnake firing away, and as well that agitator also blasting into the distance here. A surprisingly stalwart defense right now from the Pink and Tan Commander on the front lines. I am really surprised by the way that engagement went. Obviously, taking down the Commander is huge, and blasting apart some of those statics is nice as well. But yeah, losing that Destroyer was not ideal. Hopefully we can see some reclaim happening there. Torpedo bombers coming out now as the Seafoam Green and Powder Blue Commanders both step into the Navy, throwing away units left, right, and center as the orange forces that have helped reclaim the southern sea have now moved up to the northern side. Those platypus trying to march forward, and of course they also have their little anti-air guns. Super useful for whenever, for instance, you're dealing with a bunch of fighters blasting apart all of your torpedo bombers. And these platypus have exactly one target. Boom, goes the AGO, and alongside it, the entire base right here of the Seafoam Green Commander pops in a single burst of geothermal explosive smoke. No anti-air in the mix here. Oh, well, we do have a single anti-air boat. Yeah. Helping these fighters out with a little bit of anti-air would be ideal. At the end of the day, though, this was a fabulous trade, and knocking out both those commanders in this same push is really, really nice. That being said, you know what? There's actually a decent economy back here for the Seafoam Green Commander. No longer in the game, actually. Well, there you have it. There's that morale, that morale, what was I calling it? The morale tax, or maybe better said, the morale bucket, right? The morale resource, maybe that's what I'm looking for. The finite amount of morale that each player has before they're willing to, or they're not willing any longer to stay in the game. Anti-air turret set up right here for the purple base, who's no longer willing to withstand those fighters overhead here, and instead just goes ahead and sets up some anti-air defenses. Not a bad idea if you'd like to stay alive. The problem with anti-air defenses is oftentimes they won't stop the bombers from killing your base, but they will stop the bombers from killing your teammates' base. And, you know, you've kind of got to accept that and hope that your teammates have that sort of mindset as well. Cheeky, cheeky. Sneaky beaky like. The yellow commander has snuck his way into the lavender commander's base. Boom goes the fusion to a single D-gun right there. The lab goes down as well. And Jinxer gets off with some absolute trash play. The yellow commander D-gunning down everything that the lavender commander here holds near and dear. Mia is forced to, yeah, pull the gigantic sum of rocket missile trucks that they have. Oh, yeah. This is going to be a wonderful engagement. Look at all those plasma projectiles blasting apart the force here that was meant for the front line. In case you were curious what the difference between T1 and T2 looks like, maybe the best showcase there really ever could be. Capital ship now out for the blue commander. This is sort of what we've been building towards this entire game. Torpedo bombers trying to head in this direction, but obviously without a leg to stand on as these fighters blast apart anything with wings that flies overseas here. A lot of destroyers and a lot of submarines available here. That is 7 submarines. Is it enough to actually kill a T2? Oh, okay, they're in retreat. Submarines cannot fire in retreat, so retreating these is actually a really, really unfortunate move right here. We're down to 4 submarines. And the capital ship is more than happy to continue shelling away. One of the weird features about capital ships is their plasma projectile is actually big enough, it doesn't have AoE damage, that it can kill submarines from the top of the ocean, just from the surface. It's very strange. Capital ship firing away here, though, using that gunship as actually its vision source. Pretty funny to see. Yeah, there you go. You can see it. Killing submarines by just doing splash damage. Pun well intended, obviously. The splash damage. We are now setting up the amphibious laboratory. A solid move from the yellow commander. Jinxer going into the next step of the master plan, which is, of course, just to go ahead and set up a little bit of an amphibious run-by with some of those salamander heat ray tanks. We do have the whole T2 lab. We could eat up for the metal and convert into economy, right? Using this build power to build some fusion reactors and E-converters in the back, just to have some sort of eco-growth would be ideal. Looks like the red commander is interested in a little bit of T2 bombing. And I don't blame him. I don't blame him one bit, actually. There go those submarines. Yeah, look at that. I mean, let's not overstate what's going on here. This is not the quickest way to kill a to kill a Black Hydra $18,000 battleship, but considering the fact that this ship has quite literally 0 ways to defend itself, this is maybe the most efficient way of killing this battleship. So there you go. About 5,000 metal worth of T1 submarines killing 18,000 metal worth of capital ship. With the Buccaneers coming out here, eventually the depth charges will clean up these submarines, but I think in the meantime, definitely an effective way of thwarting that push right there. Where are we actually going to get it? Don't tell me we actually get this thing. No, no way. Yeah, Buccaneers sweep that up, and with the repairs here from those cheeky little death cavalry as well, that capital ship will just barely stay alive. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, I think the red commander has had just quite enough of this game. Bombers headed across the map right now, and at this point, looking to completely shut off all the power here going into the cyan commander's base. Oh, no bombs on that commander is a little unfortunate. They could have easily taken out everything in a nice centralized clump. The anti-air will actually shoot down the bombers. So like I said, anti-air might not save you from getting bombed, but it saved the teammate here, and the teammate is the eco source, so the purple commander is obviously pretty happy about that fact. Yeah, you know what? That, I was expecting a little bit more, by the way. Base went up in smoke almost at exactly the same time over here on the southern side. I'll paint you a pretty picture. The geothermal exploded. Boom. A pretty obvious sign and a pretty obvious tell right there. If you don't switch over to Approved, those bases are extremely vulnerable. Boom goes the backline economy right here, inherited by the Seafoam, or rather the Powder Blue commander. Bit of a rude comment on the front lines right there. Cavalier 870, porking up as hard as possible on the backline right here. Not enough to sustain themselves against the onslaught of units coming forward here. Pink and red, both into air production at this point. Going heavily into air production too. We have fighters on both sides, responding to different threats and building up bombing runs, respectively. Mass submarine. I wouldn't go so far as to claim that it's effective, per se. But it's definitely fun to see. And for what it's worth, at the very least, we are spending the metal. Yeah, look at all these constructors building all this stuff. Very cool. If this had been pure economy and all this had been built without building any of these submarines, this would have been a thriving economy. You can expand so far into the Navy here, and because this Navy for the Blue Commander has been so stagnant, I think it would have worked out quite nicely. But in this case, too much metal was spent. Too much metal was spent not on economy and more so on submarines that didn't really get their values worth. We have gone very, very heavily into the plasma shields here, by the way. Multiple keepers up and running. Looks like 3 in total. And it is just barely enough to deflect those plasma projectiles, and I do mean really just barely. As that capital ship fires away, it drains those shields really harshly. Torpedoes firing in every direction. Endovision just, without the T2 Navy, without the resource production, without the backline economy, it really was a risky proposition at best. Why waste 9 T2 bombers killing an AGO? Cries out one of the spectators co-commentating with me. And it's a fair criticism. Obviously, two of these advanced bombers would be perfectly fine. Instead, all 9 of them will have to die. One of those little micro things that can be improved, and then the remaining 2 bombers, say for instance, go and kill the blue economy on this side. This is looking good, though. I'm surprised to see that this capital ship isn't going ahead and just winning the game outright here. We do have another shield keeping the plasma projectiles at bay, trying to get enough energy to actually fund that shield, costing 500 energy per second. The shields are very, very expensive to maintain and to charge. But, of course, can you really put a price on your safety against the onslaught of capital ships? If you can, it comes in the thousands, if not the multiple thousands. The hundreds of thousands. Capital ships, after receiving their little buff, now require or rather, defensively requires a gigantic sum of resources to shut down. The purple base is annihilated. Just like that, 98% of the way through the APHIS. Oh man, what a bummer. Red forces managed to break through and bomb the backline economy. Now, a couple of those APHIS do stay standing, so we can go into constructors. This is rebuildable, but it definitely sucks. Rebuilding from this position is really, really unfortunate. Sparing a constructor to go finish this APHIS would probably be worthwhile as well, just to make sure that that metal isn't lost forever. Lunkheads finally making it across the map. These have been in movement for quite some time, finally making their way towards the other side of the map here. The keeper standing strong, but at this point, the pink base is really in shambles. Retreating from this position back to a safer shoreline like this northern one, maybe not a bad idea. Such a gigantic sum of boats here. I feel like reclaiming a bunch of these boats and going ahead and, yeah, going all out into units, maybe even to a T3 amphibious gantry wouldn't be the worst idea. And again, we've got this T2 lab up and running, but we haven't used it to build any T2 economy. We've got the T2 E-converters coming up right here. And I guess, you know what, I guess we do have the land-based economy over here, so that's working wonders, but it feels like that laboratory hasn't been producing anything worthwhile in a long time. The Revenge of the Duck. OP spiders. The spiders here paralyzing any of the units that come ashore. At least as many as they can. Unfortunately, there's only so much they can do. Gunship's going to be produced in mass quantity here and sent on over to defeat the lunkheads. I think it's a wonderful idea. The ducks right here firing away. Ducks, they can be very useful, but they have to be microed really carefully. Basically, what you want to do here is set target on all these boats so that they blast them all down one by one, rather than sort of distributing the damage across them, as you can see. If this had been 2 or 3 boats that had died in this assault, rather than all of them being brought to 50% HP, it would have changed the way that this engagement went by a long shot. There's those gunships, though. Webbers, of course, can reclaim as well. Spider-Man Dan. Yeah, with the Webbers here. Can reclaim a whole bunch of this. Eating up that lunkhead metal is very, very nice. There's one thing that's quite good against ducks, by the way. It's going to be those lunkheads. They are hovercraft, so they can't be targeted by the torpedoes of the ducks. And they launch depth charges, which means they can actually kill the ducks. Buccaneers here faring perfectly fine, though. Plasma shielding is holding for now, but it is fading very, very slowly. Well, maybe not as slowly as I let it on to be. A gigantic metal advantage here for the red team, and I have to say, this backline economy is looking phenomenal. As the ecos continue to scale in this way, it becomes a race to see who can produce more energy, and at 59,000 energy versus 21, this is a gigantic favor for the red team. We have a big cluster of fighters over here that have essentially been blocked off by the fact that this anti-air boats have just been chilling over here on the left-hand side. Makes it very, very difficult to deal with any of this. Oof. Heavy anti-air out here in the seas. I'm not sure that this was the right... Oh, yeah, the right bombing run whatsoever. Okay. We're going to try and bomb down the anti-air boats. With more success than I expected. But that is to say, not much success at all. The regular bombers tend not to work very well against the anti-air boats. Torpedo bombers obviously are favored, but it's just it's a tricky situation. Every commander looking for the right way to move forward in this game. With the middle section completely destroyed by these capital ships, it almost becomes a wonder of, will the capital ships line up and start firing at each other from across the channel? It'll be interesting to see. Yeah, that was a gigantic loss of red forces right there. Fighters and bombers alike, all going down right there with a really unfortunate trajectory for those bombers. If those had cut, what would that be? Parallel to the air units. Basically, if they cut across this direction, it would have been way, way easier for them to get a really important or really wonderful engagement, or even just at a diagonal, cutting across like that or like that. Instead, they went head on, so each bomber only actually landed 2 or 3 bombs on top of those units. And I have to say, I have absolutely no idea where this game is going. The red team doesn't seem keen on building T3, and in fact, they seem basically solely focused on building air units right here in the backline. Economy is continuing to scale, but why don't we have T3 production? It's anybody's guess. These salamanders are definitely starting to pile up, but there's a lot of Razorbacks out and available here. They are being idled, though. Geothermal, another obvious target that's being neglected right here. Capital ships engaging from the weirdest of angles. Able to fire past this mountain range right here and into the base of the Maroon Commander is so unfortunate. You really have to reposition your entire economy based on which one of your navies wins, because the navy that is exposed to the enemy is almost always going to be a gigantic threat. It's just mass duck production here from the tank commander. I don't hate it. I don't hate it, but I think we could do a whole lot more. Going mass ducks, going for mass, what are they called? Not the tumbleweed, but the Cortex version of the tumbleweed. Are we targeting boats down? It looks like we are starting to try and target boats down here a little bit better. It looks like there might have been that snowbally effect here at this point where the tan ducks are capable of actually taking down some of these boats, and so therefore they reduce the effect that those boats can bring them down. Probably one of the better naval engagements we've seen so far this game. Ducks getting underfoot all the units that cannot defend themselves. Always nice, of course. A third capital ship, oh my goodness. Over-investing in capital ships, certainly. The Blue Commander has definitely gone way, way overboard investing on those capital ships. There's really no reason to... Whoa, Mammoth got a little bit of an upgrade. Hold on a second, look at that bad boy. The Mammoth is now looking very, very strong. What on earth? Oh, okay. It's the little details, but man, it looks all, you know, actually plausible as far as its walking animation goes. Huh. I hadn't even noticed. How cool is that? Anti-air bots swarming forward as those mammoths also march forward, crawling across the beach. Man, I can't get over how cool those look. Those look so much better. They look like they're actually crawling across the beach, sort of like a turtle, rather than before when they kind of just looked like a brick. Which, to be fair, you know, there's something to appreciate about the brick. Definitely an appreciable aesthetic, but yeah, I think this iteration of the Mammoth looks phenomenal. Cortex engineers working their hardest. Salamanders, though. Talk about nailed it on the first attempt. Actually, not true. Anybody remember the alligator? The salamander is another product of revision by Cortex engineers who, you know, for being the brute force faction, they really innovate a lot more than Armada does, I will say. Yeah, Cortex units tend, or Cortex, yeah, just in general, tends to innovate a lot more than Armada. Maybe the lore is a little bit one-sided, right? Written by the victors, so to speak, and Armada kind of wrote themselves as the innovative heroes of, you know, innovation and strategy and all that stuff. When in reality, it was really Cortex coming up with solutions to complicated problems, like strapping microwaves onto the top of tanks. Either way here. It does appear that the blue base is slowly but surely being blasted apart. Boom goes the blue base. Fighters now moving inwards here as the Mammoth continues stepping forward. Mammoth very, very useful for dealing with those Razorbacks, of course. They have the HP to actually go toe-to-toe with the Razorbacks, which is, you know, not a lot of units can say that. The Mammoth is one of them. Resbots here, picking up any of the fallen units. I love to see that. Yeah, picking up these Razorbacks and putting them into the composition here, using them to aggression the front line. I think that's a wonderful idea. So much anti-air here, shooting down these fighters. What on earth are we throwing the fighters away for? I really couldn't tell you. Spy bots moving into position. Okay. We've got a play cooking up here. I can smell it. Have we got a nuclear chamber? We do have one coming up right now. Yeah, okay. Pretty funny. Definitely pretty funny. You can see where this is going. The Yellow Commander looking for a very effective way of shutting this game down. Obviously, this is going to take a good long while before that nuke is charged up, so this is, I'd be surprised if this is what resolves this game. Yeah, the Blue Commander talking about killing players at shore, but over-investing into 4 capital ships rather than going into a single land-based unit to harass any of these bases here. It's a little bit of a blinders moment, right? You gotta peel the blinders off and look at your other options. Going into air, which I do see, we have the T2 airplanes up and running, that's a great option. But yeah, going into multiple capital ships like this, I mean, if we just click on all these, 72,000 Medal of Capital ships that effectively haven't been getting value for the last 5 or 10 minutes. They really have wasted so much time on these shields, wasted so much time trying to kill these bases. E-converters being self-destructed, I guess. They're essentially a gigantic waste of metal, all said and done. And yeah, the Purple Commander takes over and immediately starts up that T3 gantry. I think that's the right move here. Deconstructing the T2, deconstructing all the rest of it. This is what we're waiting for, though. Nuclear missile is a little over halfway charged. The Yellow Commander is just staring at it, just like us. You can see Jinxer says, hee hee, thinking about that nuclear missile, thinking about that sweet, sweet electromagnetic pulse. Anti-nuke charged up and ready to go. But obviously, nothing in the face of a single spy bot. The blue team queuing a resign boat here. Resbots resurrecting all the Razorbacks, all the Mammoths, getting everything back up on the field here. Razorbacks to clean up this big swarm of grunts moving forward. Nicely done. The aggression is held. The pseudo-aggression, I should say. It's checkmate. Nuclear missile is ready. Nuclear missile is ready. Come on, I want to see it. Come on, we all want to see it. After all that preparation, the Yellow Commander just goes ahead and pulls the trigger using the T3 units rather than anything else. The Mammoth's trying to crawl up the hillside here. Why are we doing it? Come on. He shows it. Showing them their doom. 34 seconds of paralysis right there. The nuclear missile is up and away. Bombs away. High into the sky. And over towards the Cyan base. We needed to end this 10 minutes ago. Kryzak Cavalier 870. Oh, we're going for the purple base. Okay. boom goes the purple base, and it's the note that strikes a chord across the entirety of the remainder of the blue force as they all throw in the towel and realize that it is essentially hopeless. An economic victory, if ever there was one, taking advantage of their resources and continuing to scale the economies instead of dumping resources into unusable units. The blue commander winning every award except for the destroying enemy resource production, which of course goes to Jinxer. Phew, what a longer match. Only 39 minutes or so, but definitely felt like a late game match. Thanks a ton for watching, and I sure hope you enjoyed. Feel free to hit that like and subscribe button if you'd like to join the Brightworks. There's always the description where you can find the Discord link as well. I hope you have a fabulous rest of your day, and I will see you in the very next match of Beyond All Reason. Peace out, everybody.